We are live. What is up, everyone? This is the Tex-Trek podcast, live, here to discuss the first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
Or hell no. I don't know. Y'all don't know even know what my reaction might be. I kind of like it.
Yeah,
I think I only know yours, Father. I don't know Brian's either.
Yeah, between the three of us, we have not really discussed this much. But we're just gonna.
It's dramatic. This could be some serious ass live TV.
So we already have.
I had to show my sponsor, Dr. Pepper, because we're in Texas.
We have two people watching. Just wait a couple seconds for a few more to come on, and then I'll go ahead and dive right in.
Nice. Howdy to the two people.
Okay, well, let's just go ahead and get started.
All right.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 109th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And we are here to talk about the premiere episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, Second Contact.
Their only second ever ongoing cartoon series.
Yeah.
Yes, unless you count Short Treks as sometimes a cartoon.
That's why I said ongoing.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, is Short Treks ongoing? It might be. I don't know what the future plans with that is.
They're not persistent serialized stories that continue from one to the next. So take that shit out of here, Father.
Yeah, it occurs to me Short Treks would actually fit within the fan film guidelines.
No, because they use actors from
Okay.
other things.
Not always, but sometimes. Some of them would fit.
But enough about Short Treks. We're here to talk about Lower Decks. And this first episode, Second Contact, written by Mike McMahan, the showrunner himself, and directed by Barry J. Kelly. Second Contact, not to be confused with First Contact, a.k.a. the episode where Riker bangs an alien in a hospital.
It's also a movie.
Yeah, it's also Star Trek First Contact. Star Trek kind of reuses titles. Like,
what's that?
Star Trek kind of reuses titles sometimes. Like there was Emissary and The Emissary, or Eye of the Beholder and The Eye of the Beholder.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Eye and Blink of an Eye.
They need to watch that. Star Trek, we're on to you.
I mean, we're almost to 800 individual productions of.
There's other words in the English language, y'all.
Yeah.
Well,
look, you can tell they were trying with Discovery.
That's true. Pull some more Shakespeare quotes. He wrote stuff.
How sharper than a serpent's tooth and whatnot.
Yeah. It is to have a thankless child. Full quote.
Or no, that wasn't Discovery. That was the animated series.
Yes.
Oh yeah, they did reference it or something on Discovery, didn't they?
Well, they did some Shakespeare too, like Vaulting Ambitions and what have you. But
by the way, because you did mention Short Treks, though, of course, am I right? So showrunner guy is he directed the Short Treks episode with Harry Mudd, right?
No, Wilson Rain directed that.
Who am I?
He wrote it. Though.
He wrote it, right? Okay, I was trying to get that clear in my head.
Interesting. I'd forgotten about that.
And that's your favorite of the Short Treks episode, I know, Fatheree.
Yeah,
and it's up there for me. It's probably in my top 2 or 3. I don't think it's quite number 1, but it's right up there.
Yeah, I'd have to see them laid out again, but
so
yeah, I'd have to see them laid out. But yeah, I remember liking that one a lot.
But here is Mike McMahon's full-blown show. So we should each just kind of give our opening statements on what our general impressions were, not just with this episode, but kind of our first taste of Star Trek's first animated comedy, its first return to animation in decades. So should I go first, or would one of y'all like to go first?
Maybe you should do it first, Fatheree. It's been a little while since you've kicked us off.
Well, I would just say that I'm really happy with what we got here. And before anyone says that I hate it, because we actually got a recent comment that we hate Lower Decks before it even has come out, which I'm not really sure how someone could conclude based on the things we've said before. Before anyone says I hate it, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't hate it. I like it. There are some things in it I dislike, but that doesn't mean I hate it. Just like there are some things I dislike in every Star Trek show that has ever been made.
I feel like, Fatheree, maybe they were thinking about my pre-show comments where I was like, just over and over, there's no way I'm going to like this. I'm sorry. I'm sure it'll be fine on its own merits, but it's not for me. I hate it already.
Well, that's not how they phrased it. They phrased it like, you guys hate this show already.
Okay, well, I guess we'll find out as the comments roll out. So pray continue, sir.
But yeah, I actually feel a lot like I did in 2009 after Star Trek 09 came out, in that I followed a lot of that production. I was kind of keeping up with the promotional material. I was a lot less afraid of spoilers back then. And I had already seen there would be some things that I would kind of dislike, or like, ooh, I don't know if I would want to do that in Star Trek. And I was a little nervous going into it. But overall, I was so impressed with what they did both then and now that I ended up having a really good time and kind of felt like relieved. I'm not as relieved as I was then, because I was never as nervous as I was back then. This is kind of the show that I was hoping for based on the information we'd been given ahead of time. And the things that I'm most excited about is the stuff that Mike McMahan has kind of promised that we will get. And, you know, I'm eager to see him continue his vision. I think it's very unique, and this show definitely knows what it wants to do. It feels pretty confident coming out of the gates. Unlike, I'm going to compare it to Star Trek Discovery, that when it had its 2-episode premiere, we were kind of confused about what exactly is going on with the show. And I think the show is kind of confused about what exactly it wanted to do. And
for sure.
I mean, that's basically where I stand. But I was a little nervous at the beginning of this. Some things I'll talk about, like the first few minutes, I was like kind of rolling my eyes at. But by the end of it, I was very happy with what we got. So, Dave, Brian,
you want to go for it?
Okay. It didn't blow me away. I am definitely wanting to give it some more episodes to see if I can get into this groove. I don't actually hate this, but I didn't spend a lot of time laughing, and I found that some of the characters I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this character be center stage for 10 episodes. And so I have, my concerns are still kind of there, which most of my concerns were kind of orbited around, I think it'll get old quick. And so it hasn't gotten old quick or old yet, but I mean, is it going to? We're still only half an hour in. But yeah, I'm still on this train, and I'm going to see where it goes. But I can't actually say it blew me away. So.
All right. Nor were you, I guess, repulsed by it.
Yeah, I'm not totally. No,
okay. Sounds like there's at least one repulsive scene I'll be excited to get into later.
I guess thinking back at it, it might be the least exciting premiere episode of any Star Trek series. As for me personally, I don't know. I guess I'd have to go. I don't remember which one of the animated series came first, but
Beyond the Farthest Star.
Titles not. I'm not up on my animated series like I should be. I'd have to look that one up. So anyway,
Fatheree, sorry. Go ahead. Finish up, Brian.
No, that's. I guess I feel like it's got a whole lot of the gloss of Trek, but I'm not sure if the heart of Trek is there, or at least the heart. I think I want to call it the heart of Trek. I'm not sure if that's there.
Maybe Ensign Tendi just needs to pump that heart. It's an inside reference from the episode.
Yeah, I will say some of the stuff I thought was going to bother me didn't bother me. It was kind of other things that more subtle stuff, actually, rather than some of the more overt, in-your-face weirdness. So.
Fatheree, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the premiere of Discovery. I'm sure you'll recall that at the time I was really pretty down on it, so much so that I was like, shoot, we've put together this podcast and I've liked all the retro episodes we did before Discovery. But now we're 2 episodes in. I'm not feeling this show. Maybe I shouldn't do this podcast with you.
You had one positive thing to say about those first 2 episodes of Discovery.
What was the positive thing? Remind me.
You liked the sound effects on the Shinjo bridge, and you
that's like when a show like Star Trek wins an Emmy or something like that for visual effects, and everybody knows it's horse shit. You're like, that's not actually a real award. I take that back. Technical people do amazing things. I just it's not what people remember the shows for usually. But anyway, weirdly, so I bring it up because I think, despite some reservations and despite the fact that I don't really do animated comedies much at all, I actually would say that I think I had an overall better time with this than I did of the first episode of Discovery. So make of that what you will. We'll see where things go. Discovery picked up with the 3rd episode and kept on going.
Even then, it took you a little while to get into it. I remember on episode 4 or 5, you were like, maybe Chris Jones should get on here instead of me. You were talking to him in a group message with me, Chris, do you want to take my place on the podcast?
Chris Jones, that guy's a hobo. No. What was I thinking? Dave of the past, you fool. Anyway, Fatheree, before I actually watched it, you kind of mentioned, Brian in our little group thread just said, hey, what'd just general thoughts, and you were like, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but you're like, but it got off to a little sluggishly, and then I kind of got into it after 5 or 10 minutes. And I was kind of glad I had actually read that, because those first 5 minutes, I was not on board. I was the kind of rapid fire jokes thing, not usually my thing. And indeed, it's somewhat like Brian. It didn't wow me with them. I didn't laugh that much, but I did. That's kind of a peculiar thing to me, where if I'm watching it by myself, as I was, I just tend to not be that into comedies. If I'm watching it with somebody else and I'm laughing along with them, it all goes over more easily. But I do think so it's maybe a little too Adult Swim for me in some ways, but I warmed to it as I progressed. I like seeing the characters start to show some shades of depth as it went along, and I think that some of the style of it may grow on me. I feel like I'm at a point where I can give it some leeway. Whereas my guess was that I might not have, I might watch one episode and I might be like, nope, I'm out. So as to its heart or whatever, I think that you're somewhat right, Brian. There definitely is a heart, but I feel like the heart that's beating there is a little bit more of the heart of an 80s comedy movie, sort of the Stripes or I guess
Police Academy.
Police Academy a little bit, where it's like the stiff guy learns to cut loose a little bit, and
who's the main character
learns
Police
to
Mahoney, right?
Say again.
Yeah,
the main character in Police Academy, Mahoney.
Yeah, I think so.
It's very similar to Mariner, is what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah. It basically the one or two of the main characters have to kind of grow, but they did, and sort of in the first episode, they both got them to a place with a little bit more depth. They introduced some stuff for Mariner. I don't want to go into too many specifics, but suffice to say, it left me feeling pretty solid about it and interested to see what comes next. So I guess I'm somewhere between Fatheree and Brian as to my level of enthusiasm.
Well, I will say this before we dive into specifics, but it is extremely refreshing to have a Star Trek show that isn't as dark and dreary and gloomy as Picard and Discovery have been. And it certainly feels like people who've been upset because they didn't like the aesthetic changes in Discovery, and I understand that, or those Discovery shuttles showing up in Picard. This show actually looks like the Star Trek Berman era continued.
See, I was hoping they'd stick a disco shuttle in there just for you.
That would have been hilarious. That would have been the funniest thing for me. No, there were some funny scenes. I wrote down some scenes I liked.
It is definitely a refreshing change of pace. And if this was the only Star Trek show we were getting, I don't know if I would be as satisfied. But given that we have all this other content out, this show is a perfect addition, I think, in the family of shows that we're getting. But
whoa, easy on the word perfect, Fatheree. My God.
There's a perfect show. I just said it's perfectly filling that niche.
I do agree. I want a diversity of shows. If they're going to make a bunch of Star Trek at the same time, then I want them all to be very, very different. And I do applaud them for trying this. The jury is still out, in my opinion, about whether or not it was a successful experiment, but I applaud them for the effort. So
it is definitely, if nothing else, it is quite the love letter to TNG in that era.
Yeah.
Well, this episode specifically, Second Contact, that we're going to talk about, I'm just going to read the synopsis from Memory Alpha and then kind of expand on it with spoilers.
Good luck, by the way, to Memory Alpha in charting these shows and deciding what is or isn't canon. I think that'll be an interesting challenge for them in the year to come.
This is canon, though. Anything that's on screen is canon.
All right, we'll talk more about that later. I understand the strict definition of it. We'll talk more about it later.
Ensign Tendi has her first day of work on Starfleet's USS Cerritos, where she meets fellow support crew members Ensign Mariner, Boimler, and Rutherford. Meanwhile, Boimler is tasked with a secret special assignment, and Rutherford attempts to keep his dating life intact while a sci-fi disaster strikes the ship. And I'll just expand on that with spoilers, but I guess that sci-fi disaster is a zombie outbreak that's brought up after a Second Contact mission on a planet that also gives us the goody-goody two-shoes Boimler having to report on Mariner, who it turns out, we find out at the end, is the captain's daughter. Big surprise there to kind of hook you to see what happens next. And they have a misadventure with a spider cow on an alien farm.
Somewhere, I did look on Memory Alpha. I wanted to see if they had like the spider cow thing in the, with the listing yet as a creature. It actually many of these things struck me as things that would fit in, like all the broad strokes of the plot, I think fit in just fine with Trek. It's only the silliness that's like maybe wouldn't as far as canon, but most of the stuff would.
Yeah, no, I think there's nothing in here that breaks canon, but regardless if it does or not, it's all going to be canon. So you got to start no prizing it now.
Yes, canon and continuity are two different things. So
the ship, by the way, does look pretty good. Just right out of the gate, I got to say, lush visuals. The character design is, I think, kind of that Adult Swim style, but it's like got a nice high frame rate and it has a certain visual lushness to it, and obviously all the space scenes look really nice.
Yeah, we open with the Cerritos at Douglas Station, which we got in that clip earlier where Boimler is recording his captain's log in the closet. Mm-hmm. So Dave and I talked about this already, but yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
How does she know he's recording a captain's log in there?
I think she heard him. She was walking down the corridor.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, I didn't quite understand.
I thought she might actually have just walked in on him getting something from the supply closet, basically. And she's like, oh my God.
Yeah, but it seems like the moment the door opens, he kind of stops. So I guess, yeah, she was at the door listening in, then maybe.
She caught him masturbating. Yeah. as you do in Trek.
Yes.
Yeah. But Brian, Dave, and I already talked about this when we did our Comic-Con recap. But what did you think of this opening scene that we got here?
I guess I have to admit the kind of making fun of the Klingon culture that she does had me immediately thinking, I don't know if Worf would approve of this. So I think Worf might be a little offended, and I think Worf might be right to be a little offended about the way she's acting here. I mean, I guess she's apparently Romulan whiskey is like speed because she's bouncing off the walls as opposed to just drunk.
I don't know. She always seems kind of motor mouth.
Yeah.
It's more played up when she's drunk, and that was one of the things that was going to worry me about this character when I first saw this clip, is if she's always going to be just spitting out dialogue that fast. That what we've talked about is that animated, fast-paced, jokey dialogue.
Yeah,
but they don't do that the whole time, and so I was thinking I'm either going to really like this character because I find her really relatable and easy to connect to and very unique in Star Trek, or I'm going to be incredibly annoyed by her. And I actually found it to be the former, not the latter. So I'm very happy about that.
And yeah, I don't know. They never touch on her slicing his leg open again. So I guess he got over that. And
in the heightened world in which Lower Decks exists, it's, I think, a comical punchline more than anything. A kind of over the top moment. But yeah, it's, clearly they could deal with a minor stab wound.
I'm sure medically it wouldn't be a problem because she never apologizes for that on screen, and that describes who she is to me a little. That sets the tone for who she is, and maybe that's not who she is, but that's kind of the first takeaway I took, is that we don't. I guess it'd be the equivalent,
like in the real world, of somebody getting drunk and accidentally, it's almost like they spill a beer on your carpet, or they actually stumble into you and knock you down. And this is the heightened Lower Decks version of it. I have to wrap my head around it too. It's obviously a goofy cartoon in a lot of ways, but because it's also is trying to represent the 24th century, I have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to make it okay. It would be kind of funny, I think, if he had been on her case about that, like the whole episode, where he'd be like, you did cut my carotid artery yesterday.
Yeah. If he keeps bringing it up and she's like, well, I'm better than you. Yeah, that's why you sliced my leg open. Just keeps tacking that on to various scenes. And I think that would have made me, you say Brem, how do you say his name?
Boimler. Like Boyle with Muller on the end.
Boimler?
Boimler. Like, yeah, if you were saying boiler, but with an M stuck in it. Yeah. I kind of like it because it is it's a goofy name. Everybody else has kind of normal or otherwise memorable names like Mariner and Rutherford. Yeah. Boimler sounds like a doofus.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's something I'm worried about. Is I kind of find him a little aggravating, a little Jar Jar Binks, a little Neelix, a little. I don't know if I want the camera focused on this guy every episode for the next 10 weeks, but I love his
feeling. They do have an arc in mind, since the very first episode gave him kind of an arc, even in and of itself. So
yeah, I love his passion about Starfleet. I love that.
He's a little Barclay-ish, I guess.
Yeah, I love the fact that he's obsessed with the warp core and all of that. I find his complaining and whining to be a bit grating. And even the actor commented, I think, in the ready room about that he spent more time whining than ever. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of my problem with the guy.
Well, the actress who voices Mariner was like, oh, yeah, that character is very much me. And, I thought it was a testament that the showrunner, kind of let the character be me. And then they're talking to the voice actor for Boimler, and they're like, do you relate to him? And he's like, I hope not. Just kind of funny differences of character thought. Anyway. Yeah.
Let's talk about all the characters in just a second, because we do get kind of introduction moments for each of them. But before we do that, I want to talk about these opening credits, because this is kind of the only time we're seeing it for the first time. Which, these opening credits is one of the things that made me nervous in the beginning. Like, the ship getting stuck going around this black hole, it made me think like, oh, they're trying to portray this as the incompetent ship. It can't even fly past a black hole properly.
It's very much a Voyager-esque opening, but with kind of little goofy hijinks through visual hijinks to every scene.
See, I love the opening. That was probably my favorite part. Is I loved the little ways that they set it up as a big majestic Voyager, and then there's something goofy about it, like it hits the comet or whatever, and I was like, I really loved the idea of it, and I loved watching it, and I laughed, and I still think that might be my favorite part of the first episode is the opening way. Maybe just because that's a Star Trek joke I've not seen done before at all ever, and I really enjoyed the freshness of it. But yeah, I found that a lot of fun, and yeah, I like that.
Boy, I was just thinking, that movie Interstellar really solidified the iconography of modern black hole design, didn't it?
Well, that's based off of modern models that didn't exist.
Yeah, I know. It's just that in the same way that Jurassic Park brought bird-like dinosaurs into the popular culture as the standard, I think Interstellar did that with that visual design for black holes. I know it didn't invent it.
They did this in Discovery Season 2 also, and was the episode if memory serves, with Spock and Burnham going to Talos 4.
Yeah, it didn't catch on.
But I love the. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say my favorite, and you're gonna get to it. I think is the like one of the last visuals on the ship of some big space creature suckling on the nacelle. But we'll get to it in a second.
I really like the idea of doing like a return to form with the Star Trek opening credits. Star Trek Voyager has the best visually satisfying opening credit sequence of any Star Trek show, and I always kind of hoped in these new shows we get something more like that. But this just made me nervous because I don't want this ship to be like the dumbass ship.
Stock. Yeah.
One of the reasons why I ended up really enjoying this episode is it showed how competent a lot of these people actually are. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. But everything in these opening credits, they can't fly around a black hole. They crash into part of this ice comet thing. I like seeing the D-Derricks back on screen. We get these warbirds and Borg cubes fighting. I loved seeing the return of the D-Derricks, but they're making the ship to be kind of like this dumbass coward that has to flee.
Yeah, they take one hit and they're like, peace.
I counted up the ships. I counted up the ships. Those warbirds are totally fucked.
Oh, yeah. For those who have, unless maybe that's when the Borg cubes got like depowered at some point that allowed them to capture it for Picard's era. And there's my weird leech creature stuck to the nacelle. For those who are listening only, Fatheree is going through the opening sequence and showing all the goofy hijinks with the ship.
There is definitely some echoes of Ceti Alpha Eel now that I get a closer look at that.
I was going to mention that it does have kind of the profile of the Ceti Eel, although it has like a lot more eyes and it's a lot bigger. But this is kind of
cool looking.
it reminds us, I think, of the Galaxy's Child. Is that the right name of the episode where they have to sour the milk, kind of like something in this episode?
Yeah,
with that giant creature attached to the Enterprise.
You know, Fatheree, I was nervous about the opening too. I kind of had a mixture of kind of laughing at some of it, but also like, okay, this is going to be like basically the police academy crew of fuck ups. And I think though the opening is it's a little bit more just visually symbolic. I don't know if that I would take it too literally, but I think it's telling you this is going to have some fun with Trek, and these guys are, at least superficially, they look like goof-ups. I think the show wants to have that be the surface thing and then kind of reveal them to be more competent than you maybe expect.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it anymore. It was just like my first time watching this, but that made me a little
can't drive.
Uncomfortable, yeah. What did y'all notice? I'm sure you did, but the Next Generation credit font and even having like the name of the episode on screen. Something I wanted them to do with these new Trek shows is put the name of the episode on screen, like all the old Star Trek shows. We finally get that again.
Yep.
I took notice of it, other than thinking that's one more artifact of TNG that I liked, but I'd forgotten that has been kind of out of circulation for a while. So yeah, I'm for it. Good job.
And in the immediate opening after the credits, or titles, I should say, we get Ensign Tendi arriving on the ship. And she's kind of our point of view character initially, kind of like how every X-Men story begins with a new mutant being recruited into Xavier's school and meeting all the X-Men. We get that in this first episode of Lower Decks to kind of introduce everyone on an already established ship, unlike most Star Trek shows, really, other than the original series. We don't kind of drop into a ship that's like already out on its missions. These people already know each other. You know, with Next Generation and DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise and Discovery.
Well, Discovery was kind of Berman being dropped into the middle of a shit crew that was already more or less working as well as it ever was going to.
Yeah, I guess there's some truth to that.
I saw some people once, or I think one or two places online, compare Tendi to a little bit to Tilly on Disco, and she's got a little bit of that sort of bubbly enthusiasm going on.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Tilly on Discovery has just become like this catch-all comparison, because they were also saying that about Alison Pill's character in Picard. They're like, oh, she's just like Tilly on Discovery, and
I never saw
Anybody
that.
who's got some wide-eyed enthusiasm is going to get compared to him. But I suppose that's like how every doctor that's not like bubbly is compared to Dr. McCoy. They're like, oh, it's a curmudgeon like Dr. McCoy.
You have like that happy, smiley, big-eyed girl like Willow and Buffy, or Chloe on Smallville, or like every show after that. It's just like one of those niches that
it is a likable archetype, although I didn't like super plug into her character. She was maybe a little one note for the first episode for me, where everybody else got a little bit more to do, but it's a likable design.
I guess I'm always interested in the Orions, so I'm excited that we're going to get a bigger window into that. We're finally getting an Orion main character, and Tendi was the only character who at no point in the show did I go, this person is annoying. And I liked her enthusiasm. I think Tendi so far is my favorite character.
All right.
What I liked about her is that you think that she's going to get to some point where like she's like overwhelmed, or like, oh no, this isn't what I expected, or like I thought this would be so awesome, but it turned out to be like so scary and terrible. And that never happens. Like no matter what she goes through in this episode, she maintains that optimism and enthusiasm.
Yeah, actually, that was in my pitch when we were pitching series ideas. There was a character who had this relentless optimism that I thought would be really fun for a character, and Tendi is kind of that character. I think that's part of the reason I like her, is because this is very similar to an idea I had for a character on a starship, one who just cannot ever have a bad day or even a bad moment. So
yeah.
She walks in on Boimler repairing a replicator that's stuck on replicating hot bananas. I thought that was kind of funny, and it was a joke I could see easily working on other Star Trek shows in live action. That would be kind of a neat gag to do with the replicator. But
I thought it was a wonderful sly poke at tea, Earl Grey, hot. Like you have to tell the thing it has to be hot. So there's a hot setting for every single food, you know.
There's a Talking Head lyric. What is it? Life in Wartime. I forget what the song is, but where he mentions a hot potato, and it works perfectly with hot banana. I just want to let people know, if anybody's working on a musical parody, consider that.
But this is also where we see kind of Mariner's and Boimler's like working dynamic, where Boimler is like really into doing everything by the book and getting the job done as best you can and looking really good so you can advance in your career. Whereas Mariner is kind of like, yeah, why do you want to get promoted? You just have to like work even more, and it's not that great. And this is where she has that line, yes, I'm very complicated, when he kind of calls out her contradictions. Like, you say you don't mind being demoted back to an ensign, but you sure bring it up a lot. But we learn, there is more to her story than what we're initially told.
Yes.
She arguably has the most overall depth of the episode, but her and Boimler both kind of get some character moments.
Yeah, and I like their interplay, their dynamic bouncing off of each other. You have this new recruit coming onto the ship, so you have one guy who's trying to be like, oh, I'm really impressed by you, and you should be impressed by me, and we could be like these great officers. And you have the other like jaded, more cynical person. So it's kind of like when you start a new job, you might run into like either one of those two personalities.
I do like how Boimler's like, oh no, I could shape this new recruit to be like me, and we could be friends and everything. And no, what's her name? The
Mariner.
Mariner is all screwing her up and corrupting her right off the bat. He's like, no, don't corrupt her. I
did think it was interesting that Mariner doesn't say like, hey, don't be all naive and enthusiastic. In particular, she doesn't say that, but she does say, I'm going to take you under my wing, kind of. She kind of wants to show her around.
Yeah.
Hey, did just real quick question, was Boimler's interest in Tendi purely professional, like I want to shape this young officer, or was there like a hint of romantic interest or anything?
I didn't catch that hint, but it's open enough. They could
go
there
correct.
if they wanted to. They could certainly go there.
Was it
when he first,
Rutherford later will have a connection with her?
When Boimler first says hi to her, he tries to like look all cool when he's leaning next to the replicator, and then he kind of makes an ass out of himself when he says like, "Oh, your green's great with you." I mean, goes.
That's what made me think
whatever.
of it. Yeah.
He absolutely wants to impress her, but I don't know if he's actually romantically attracted to her from anything I saw. Not to say that couldn't turn out to be the case.
When we get to the scene with her and Rutherford later on, I'll have a further thought on that. But yeah, let's
talk about
Rutherford.
Well, I wanted to say, what's up with the ship having beds in the hallway? The ship is huge. What are there, like 6,000 people on this ship?
I mean, it's got to be it's still smaller than the Galaxy class, right?
That saucer is significantly thicker than a Galaxy class. Looking at the window count on the outside.
I thought, Father, I remember you sending me something that showed how somebody, did some mathematics based on the schematic and determined it was, roughly looked like maybe 2/3 the size of a Galaxy class.
Well, and then there's a question. The schematic shows the ship as having less floors than the external model of the ship does. How big is it?
A little bit of a Star Trek traditional inconsistency.
Even if it's significantly smaller than a Galaxy class, like a 2/3 of a Galaxy class, it would still be able to have 1,000 crew members, each with their own quarters, unless there's something else on the ship taking up a bunch of space. And we're probably not supposed to think about it this hard, but I did think, we've never seen crew members in Starfleet
maybe
housed like that in hallways.
Maybe it's to make room for cetacean ops.
We saw something similar in Star Trek 6, but I always pictured them being enlisted people and not junior officers.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure that... Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, in Lower Decks, they throw around the term enlist a couple of times. So I think this is just Star Trek continuing to not really know what an enlisted person is or what an officer is in their quasi-military organization.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure that the hallway sleeping arrangement really exists primarily as a plot device, because it'll be funny to see these characters interacting, waking up, going to bed, showering, sort of having a little bit more of a I don't even know what you call it, but like a shared like frat house / sorority house going on will probably be the vibe a little bit of them of that. And I think they're just looking to maybe milk it for comedy. And it's one of those cases where I'm like, it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't necessarily feel like something that should possibly exist, but it may work as a comedy show too.
Well, let's talk about Rutherford and how he has a Vulcan cybernetic implant that even has like a pointed ear on it, which I thought was a nice touch.
No, I guess I didn't actually notice that.
I hadn't caught that until you put that slide up. You're right. I do like the gimmick of his cyborg thing. That is fun. There's a lot of energy.
Basically, it makes him Vulcan out every once in a while.
Yes, it's great. I really like that as a gimmick. I had some good laughs out of him and his that routine.
He was the character I was most unsure of out of our main 4 lower deckers going into the show. I had not really heard much about him in kind of the promotional material, other than the fact that he is a big tech nerd and he's an early adopter. And he's like, whenever a new iPhone comes out, he'd be the guy who gets like the new phone on like the first day it's out. And that's why he has like this weird cyborg tech that doesn't have all the bugs worked out implanted in the side of his head. But I like that they don't make him just kind of like this idiot who can't like repair the engines and stuff. He's actually like really good at his job, and he seems to be like out of all these people, the one who has like the best time, working on this ship. He's just like so enthusiastic about what he's doing.
Yeah, he actually has, I guess, an overall a pretty good day in this episode.
Yeah.
Most stuff goes right as far as he's concerned.
Oh, we also get the holodeck scene in the beginning, and this is also where I got a little nervous because I guess to make it like new audience member friendly, they're having to like explain what a holodeck is, and kind of the same way that, like Tendi didn't really understand like blue is science and red is command, and these people aren't commanders, but they're in the command division. They're just like spoon feeding this like new audience members, and then they do the same thing with the holodeck.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's actually a reasonable thing to do. They definitely are hoping for a broader audience. I don't mind a little exposition as to what a holodeck is. I don't think they spent too much time on it, but it was also a place where they could show some visual lushness and everything that they do here does expand on the personalities of the people. Yeah.
I was a character who doesn't know what sand is, even though she's probably been to the Starfleet Academy, which is on the coast in California.
Yeah, and the planet Orion has got to have holodecks. That's absurd. That's like saying Las Vegas wouldn't have holodecks in the 24th
it's an
century.
absurd comedy, though. I mean, yeah, it's a little ridiculous. Although I could also imagine her that she was so kind of devoted to the academy life that she didn't go and hang out on the beaches when she was at the academy. I think we're finding out what's going to be par for the course, and one of it is that there's going to be a level of goofy exaggeration that's pretty high at times.
Yes.
Including things like, what's this thing you Earthler, or you people call sand?
Yes.
Where's Anakin Skywalker when you need him?
Well, the Orions are something that I really want to explore more of now that we have an Orion regular character. That was one of my things that I put in our top 5 things we want to see in Lower Decks Season 1 podcast. And we get a glimpse of it here on the holodeck. But instead of them looking like criminals, which is kind of what I think of Orions as, they look like ancient Greeks in togas, but whatever.
We don't really know what they're like in the 24th century. We've pretty much all our windows into Orion culture, aside from some verbal references to the Orion Syndicate, have been orbited around. I guess what? No, I don't think there's any Orions in Picard, is there?
No.
Yeah. So I did like to get to see the planet Orion. I like seeing Hawaii too, just because I'd always wanted to see Hawaii show up on Star Trek. But
and then of course we get to
Hawaii and Alaska, Brian.
Yeah.
Huh?
You've gotten to see Hawaii and Alaska.
Yes. My 2 favorite states.
Yeah. No more throwaways for you. And then we get to Boimler's fantasy, which is the warp core, which was one of those things that made me laugh.
Yes, that was funny.
It was the right level of goofy and character insightful, I guess. And that was like, warp core.
What about Mariner's holodeck program, the nude Olympic training?
I thought that was fun. I thought it was pretty. I thought it was pretty
nervous.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty daring that she would just plop this new girl into the middle of a room with a bunch of naked guys in a holodeck without her permission. But then it seems like she doesn't give a shit. She just does what she's going to do. So I was like, well, it's in character. I don't know. And there's dodgier ethical things later on in the show than this. So I guess I'll just shrug and say she's weird.
The reason why it made me nervous is because there are kind of a lot of low-hanging fruit with Star Trek humor and jokes that I think are kind of played out. Like, people use the holodeck for pornography. Like, I knew there was going to be some of that in the show, but I was like, oh, did we really need that? Like in the first 5 minutes,
one could argue that we're getting it out of the way on the front.
Yes.
Just let's get that joke out of the way.
Yeah, that actually does make some sense. Like, if you're going to mention the holodeck, go ahead and let the new audience know that yes, we're aware that not everybody goes to like lofty stuff or just to like see the heights of Everest. Yeah, so.
But beyond the holodeck, I do want to talk about the Cerritos itself, just because new ships are kind of like a new character in a way. And we've mentioned in the past about like the design of the ship. I think the best way to sum it up that I've come up with is it looks like a TNG era kit bash for a random background ship, like you would see at the graveyard of Wolf 359. Which the more I think about that, the more perfect visual identity for this unimportant Starfleet ship.
Yes. I love that it's actually one of the slightly less aesthetically pleasing Starfleet ships out there, but does feel absolutely part of the family. It's kind of an ugly duckling.
It's not super sleek. It's not super sexy or powerful looking, or doesn't look like it's super fast or anything. It just looks like that'd be like a
more or less have a matching deflector dish to the Enterprise, the Enterprise D.
It's similar.
Yeah, very similar.
I like the iconography of that. It's one of those simple things that's just but 100% a visual callback to TNG.
And it also has a lot of familiar interiors, including Okudagram stuff. They actually had Mike and Denise Okuda contribute some stuff to the show and kind of help guide them on how to do all the Okudagrams. So that's cool. They're bringing back old school production people for that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And all of the shuttles, because it's a California class ship and Cerritos is a city in California, All of the shuttles, I think, are named after parks in California. We have, in the shuttle bay, we see shuttles Redwood, Joshua Tree, and Yosemite.
Ah, I had not caught that, but that's very cool. I
There's
approve.
also,
like that.
I thought this is an interesting detail. There's a guy in a turban.
Oh yeah, I was just noticing that while you had that still frame. What's his name? Like a Sheik?
Yeah, like Khan.
Yes.
I think Gene Roddenberry would have been very happy to see that if he was around, because how he wanted to have like those Native Americans in the motion picture, people that can like express like their cultural identity in their uniform. I think he would have really liked that.
Would he have liked the that it's like religion peeking its head though?
I mean, it could be more cultural than religion, depending on how you want to view religion.
That's true. Yeah, I think he would be pretty down for the cultural one. Maybe not as much for the explicitly religious one.
Yeah, he was a bit of an anti-theist.
Yep.
But the thing with the bunks in the corridor that Brian mentioned, it is weird because of the size of the ship. That's the first thing I thought of, and it just also seems weird that you'd have like, I've never seen people with like towels like walking down corridors.
To be fair, Roddenberry was like very big in the 70s and 80s that nudity would not be a shameful thing in the 23rd century.
Speaking of what Roddenberry would approve of.
Yeah. I think so that actually fit, you can't say Roddenberry wouldn't approve of that part.
And I think I forgot to throw this in at the end in my notes for the Gorn eggs when we talk about all the little Easter eggs and in jokes and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm reminded now that Tendi and some of the other characters later are carrying those round cylindrical bags that we see in The Next Generation.
Yeah, the hard shell duffel bags.
Yeah. Yes. The ship also has a bar, like 10 forward. It is a very similar type layout and aesthetic.
Yeah, that's always good. It's gonna be an obvious recurring spot for characters to chat about.
And the bridge of the ship, I thought was a really cool design. How it's kind of like square and clunky, but it still looks, kind of cool and high tech. And a lot of the Okudagram stuff, and the stations are actually clearly labeled. You can see things like engineering, mission ops, environment, and science stations. And as far as like the tactical in relation to the captain's chair and first officer's chair and the ops and con, it's the exact same layout as The Next Generation.
Yeah. I remember watching on when the Ready Room doing their behind the scenes stuff, saying that they wanted that sort of a hotel look, a kind of a nice place to live in if you were on that ship for months at a time out there in space.
And when Boimler enters the bridge and he's coming on there all scared and nervous, one of the things that I heard from like an actual service person said that like it felt like really realistic was when he's kind of like drowned out by his own anxiety where he can't hear anything.
Oh,
and he's
right.
Like super nervous, kind of like sweating bullets around all the...
Somebody's talking to him and he doesn't catch it at first. Yeah.
Yeah. And, when he's called into the captain's ready room, like I've heard from an actual like enlisted person in the military, like that's super realistic. Like if you're like talking to like a high ranking officer, it's very scary.
One of our listeners right now mentioned the bunk situation as being similar to life on a real military ship, and yeah, that's sounds accurate. It's just that I guess it's not what we're used to on board these seemingly luxurious larger ships of the TNG era.
and if they were to reveal that there's some special technology or something else that's taking up a large hunk of the ship's hull, I'd be fine with it. Okay, yeah, that's just how much that's how they have to fit people on here. But they haven't mentioned any big system like or thing like it's not set up to take huge diplomatic parties or something. So.
One of the things I was concerned with going into the show was Captain Freeman, because I didn't want to have like a goofball captain or someone who's just kind of like a ridiculous asshole captain for comedy's sake. I wanted to have a pretty believable captain who felt like, oh yeah, I can totally see this person being in charge of a ship in the fleet. And I like what we saw of Captain Freeman and kind of the assignment she gives Boimler, which he figures out, yeah, this guy is a total by the book guy. If I tell him to spy on my daughter, we eventually learn Mariner is her daughter. If I order him to do it, he's going to do it, and he's going to report back. He'll be a tattletale.
She arguably did sort of two pretty negative things in the episode, which is one, ask a crew member to spy on another one and do it off the books, and then of course near
the end. Is it off the books?
What's that?
Is it off the books?
Yeah, I don't know how you describe that. She said keep it a secret between us. If nothing else, she asked him to spy on another crew member for kind of personal reasons. It's
it turns out,
it's a little shady.
You can make a professional argument for it. If you're like, I'm worried about this person not following regulations, I need you to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, she'll later say that she feels like her daughter is undercutting her authority, in front of the rest of the staff crew. Yeah. But she does that, which at least feels somewhat shady, and then she also clearly does overlook the lower deckers' contribution to the solution at the end of the episode.
And even the guy's name.
That's true.
We've seen captains get names wrong before.
Oh, yeah. I'm fine with that.
Pike and Picard have all done that.
But she doesn't apologize. She doesn't even care that she got the name wrong. And that's the part that bothered me. The fact that she got the name wrong felt believable, but the fact that she doesn't care that she got the name wrong, I guess that was this, and the fact that guy was so rude to Tendi when she shows up in the shuttle bay. It kind of feels like I'm in the Kelvin universe with these wider range of Starfleet behaviors, and there's lots of grumpy, mean people who just seem to be grumpy and mean because that's just how this universe works.
She was holding up the line coming off of the shuttle, so I think that was kind of justified too.
It just doesn't feel like.
Well, I was going to say, if the captain does have some flaws, then it's certainly, not that's a little bit of a break from the sort of Roddenberry vision sometimes, but not one that I necessarily have a major issue with. And it would certainly explain why Mariner maybe has rebelled the way she has. If her mom is a little distant, a little unapologetic when she, does something that might be not the best decision or not the nicest decision anyway. She's competent as a captain for sure.
Yeah. And I have to admit, now that I'm thinking about it, the captain sets the tone for the ship. So she's a bit of a jerk. And then that could easily filter down through the office, all the other officers, that's how we do things on this ship.
But I think that other captains come off as a bit of a jerk if you're one of these like lower deck people. And
they all but made it a point to in the Lower Decks episode of TNG season 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, except for Worf, ironically, Riker and Picard, and Crusher was cool too. But Riker and Picard were both hard asses.
Yeah, but I don't know if they didn't. Wasn't there a correction when they got Barclay's name wrong in front of him?
I think like Picard apologized. Like when Pike in Star Trek 09, I know it's the Kelvin timeline, but when Pike doesn't know Chekhov's name, it's like Russian Ensign, what's your name? Chekhov, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. The thing is that we.
But he was kind of also paying a compliment at the same time. He's like, "Hey, whiz kid," or whatever. What's your name?
No, he said Russian Ensign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this feels like the Kelvin universe as far as the way this Starfleet interacts with each other.
It'll be interesting to see how they continue to play that. Of course, everything is just heightened for animation and comedic animation. So I think I don't know that we're really supposed to take away too much. Like this captain is a bitch. This captain's a hard ass. So much as for dramatic reasons, we need her to be a little bit of a hard ass.
But I think we always see captains. We always see them being very stern with personnel like that.
Yeah.
And we typically only see the warmer sides of them with the rest of the regular cast. So I think when you're more distant from the captain by rank, when you're a bit more removed, you're not going to have those warmer connections. So they do feel like a little bit more stern.
Yeah, but we have to admit the captain screwed up here. I think Boimler went in.
You can't get it right either. Why are you giving her a hard time?
I knew you were going to say that, Fatheree. That's so good.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know to skip. I guess I have a comment about the later scene when they meet again at the end, and maybe I'll save it for then. So,
Let's talk about the Galler, or that's what the Galler system, the Galler planet.
Yeah,
the
it looks cool.
We have.
I think the planet looks cooler than the little pigmen people. I'm already kind of wanting to see these characters translated into someone doing like realistic cosplay or a painting of these little dudes as kind of like realistic aliens. I want to see the flip of the cartoony style. I want to see the realistic version of them.
Well, this is what kind of kicks off our zombie storyline when Commander Ransom is bit by a mosquito, and we get this new transporter effect where they're beamed up, but eventually this infection, this viral infection, this DNA-altering virus is going to cause him to become patient zero in a zombie outbreak while Rutherford's on his date. So this is one of the things that made me nervous was when we have that sequence where Ransom does zombie out. The way that Rutherford and a Trill character, by the way, Ensign Barnes, he's on a date with, the way they were still kind of like going about their date, and they even like take time to like hold hands and smile at each other, and they continue to talk while there's just all this zombie chaos going on around them. It really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But then by the end of the episode, I was okay with it when it was kind of explained that, oh, it's just because like they're just so used to this. They're such good Starfleet officers. They're able to like handle this type of stuff that it kind of felt like not that big of a deal. And to me, like that kind of like justified it.
I guess I just put it, the engineer guy said, oh, well, he's got this weird implant that plays with his emotions. So he's kind of continuing the date because his emotion chip is malfunctioning. But I couldn't understand why the Trill girl wasn't like, no, we can't do this date. There's a problem. Would you stop flirting with me? We've got, I kind of expected her to be reacting in a more realistic. I can't think of a better word for it.
She's able to like handle her shit when they're having to stun all those zombies that are charging after them. And I just like that they don't play these guys as like bumbling buffoons. I like that they're actually really good at their jobs.
There's a trope that I see a lot in superhero comics, and that shows up sometimes, and I think was going on in that scene in the bar, which is that. When you're so used to kind of crazy stuff, the writers get, to me, it's a thing I don't really like. It's a meta thing where people will just have casual conversations while like superheroes are fighting some bad guys, or they'll be talking to, Spider-Man will be talking to Aunt May on the phone while he foils a bank robbery. And like every once in a while I see it work, but usually all it does is devalue the drama for me. So it's like a trope I especially don't like. And I had a similar reaction to you, Fatheree. It's a comedy, so I kind of get it. They were sort of, I think they wanted to me, the vibe they just wanted to show was just that they're goofy young people in love, or at least in infatuation, and they were kind of oblivious. And in that exaggerated sense, I don't mind it too much. But if they do it all the time, it may become something I don't like.
I'll also say, if they're so competent, then why do they take a play from the dumb people in a zombie movie handbook and take their space suits off? You have a suit that can protect you from being infected. Why would you take that off?
They said it was low on oxygen.
Yeah, well, you could just crack the helmet. You're still better off if they try to bite you or something.
They think in big moves on animation, and I think they're like, let's put them back into their other uniforms now that they're not in space.
Dave, one of the things that you said you hoped to see in Lower Decks was action, and I think we do have to talk about like how just great the show is visually. Not only like do the designs really work, I think, but also just the animation is so crisp and detailed. But I think they do the action very well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Walking on the hull was really cool. I dig that.
Or I love when they float past, when they're outside of the ship and they float past Shax, who's just like beating the shit out of all these zombies.
Yeah, for whatever reason, that one would like while also kind of another version of the kind of goofy juxtaposition of like, because don't they like kind of have them holding hands and it's kind of like quasi romantic, and meanwhile, just behind the windows, shield, whatever. There's this brutal fight going on. That one did make me laugh, though.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well. There was a part of me that was like, why don't they just call for a site-to-site transport? But then I was like, because we wouldn't get this cool scene where they're drifting past a window and everyone inside is fighting. So sure, I'll let it pass.
It was cool visuals that are a lot easier to do in animation than live action.
Yeah,
sure. They can just let's have them walk on the hold. Let's do it.
It doesn't feel like something that doesn't work in Star Trek. I mean, we've seen these spacewalks before, so it was a good use of animation. But just like when Barnes and Rutherford come back into the ship and they have like a little bit of a phaser battle, and she like slides down the hallway. Like I like that shows them actually being good at their jobs. It's just that's the reason why I'm able to buy into all of this stuff, and I kind of turned around on some of my reservations by the end of the episode. And Brian, I think that if we got to figure out like which of these characters we relate to the most, I could see Brian as the ensign Rutherford, because he's like so much of a nerd that he gets so into like this technology and like this hatch that doesn't open correctly, and like, oh, I need to run a stage 2 diagnostic.
No, so I freely admit that there is a part of him worrying about this little continuity detail. The door should have opened. That's exactly the sort of things that OCD fans like me I've even done it in this podcast, saying, wait a minute, this should have worked like that. Why is it not working like that? And, ignoring the bigger picture. I really did appreciate the fact that his Vulcan chip was like, oh, no, I've got to obsess about this thing. And how much of that is his personality and how much of it is the cyborg implant is still working that out. But I kind of like the fact that it's not entirely clear which bits are which for who he is as a character. So
our commenter Idic Warrior notes that Shax equals Worf season 1, which that's pretty good.
Pretty much based on Worf.
Yeah,
but he wants to detonate the warp core.
Did he actually say that during all of this?
Yeah.
The captain asks him, Lieutenant Shax, do you have any suggestions or something like that? And he says, sir, we should detonate the entire warp core.
Yeah,
the first time I heard that, I thought it was stupid. But the second time I watched it, I was like, wait a minute. There's an infection loose on the ship that is incredibly infectious for some people, but not others, and is spreading like wildfire. It's incredibly dangerous. Everyone's eating each other. Maybe we want to blow the ship up and make sure this does not spread. There is a logic to that statement. It is not just a random, I'm violent and I solve everything with violence kind of statement. At least you don't have to see it that way if you don't want to.
Idic Warrior says that I'm Mariner, and that's unfortunately not the case, although maybe I project that on the podcast or something. But Fatheree, you're Mariner and I'm Boimler. I am a more by the book kind of person in general, as it happens. Just a smartass about it.
If we could get Anna back on, I think she would be Shax.
Yeah, I did kind of like it. Yeah, we got to see who lines up. We
need artwork of all of us as these characters.
Oh man, not too hard. Okay, but let's carry on. What else do we got? I know we don't want to go too long with this episode.
No, just I guess the only other thing with the zombies before the end is Tendi in sickbay maintaining her optimism, even though like the guy she's supposed to report to for work is vomiting black goo on her, and she's having like this guy's heart.
Yeah.
It is weird to me that they didn't use an alien for this heart joke, though, because it's kind of weird cartoon logic that you can pull someone's heart out and pump it like that and they live, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't think the veins and arteries are that long, no.
Maybe he's an alien that just looks human on the face.
This site that we're looking at up on here of their landing site where they've got all their shuttles and supplies and those vehicles from what was it? Not Insurrection.
Nemesis, the Argo.
Yeah, the Argos, yeah.
I did love seeing the Argos. I was like, aha, the Argos.
Argos are redeemed. I accept them now.
They look cool.
I always accepted them. I loved them from day one.
That shot, if you didn't know that this was a comedy, you would have been like, that's just a cool Star Trek animated shot of like of a landing party and their supplies. It does look
Yeah, oh yeah, and you see like the transporter buffers where they're beaming down to, and this is also where we see Lieutenant Commander Billups, the chief engineer, and this is kind of the only time we see him the whole episode when he has to look at his pad to make sure he's saying the name of the aliens correctly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I like that. That was exactly the sort of thing that should be happening more often in Star Trek, and it never does. And he's trying to get.
When I was trying to say the name of the planet, I was like, "It's Galler, right?" The Galadorians. Like I didn't even plan that. But that's how like naturalistic that is.
Yeah, and he wants to get it right. He doesn't just blow it off that whatever. I don't care how they're saying their plan. No, he makes a point of saying it until he okay. Like, how do you say this? He wants to get it right.
And this is where we get the continuation of the plot of Boimler spying on Mariner, and he thinks that she's trading weapons or some other type of technology, and it turns out it was just farm equipment.
Yeah. Right. This is arguably the crux of the episode as far as its dramatic structure goes. Yes. Him finding this, and also him ultimately choosing not to kind of turn her in for it when he finds out what the deal is. And it's it's all very larger than life. He pulls a phaser on her and everything like that, but I was, I think, kind of fully enjoying this sequence and the spider attack afterwards.
Yeah, let's talk about the spider cow that turns that gets turned loose and goes after them. I thought that was maybe a bit much if they're like being attacked by this dangerous Rick and Morty style monster, but I love that it turned out that it was not actually lethal, and to me that made it feel so Star Trek. And
it was important to me that they not kill it. And I was thinking if this is kind of going to be done Rick and Morty style, then there could be some scene where just for comedic effect, they phaser it and it detonates like one of those, what's the Star Trek, what's the TNG episode with the gory face?
Conspiracy.
Yeah. I thought they might do that as kind of funny gross out. So I actually really, really liked that they made a point, even though it was all done comedically, of course, to keep this thing alive. And then the farmer is like, "Oh, don't phaser it; that'd spoil the milk." Just like the top-end comment.
This is the place where Mariner goes off on her "I've seen some stuff" speech, right?
Yes. When she's been to more than 5 planets, unlike Boimler, and has served on 5 different ships. So she's been in Starfleet a good bit longer than him, I would think. He just enlisted a year earlier, is what Captain Freeman said. The scene also is made funnier by the fact that they have to strip down to their underwear, which I guess is kind of funny or kind of sexy, depending on how you feel about.
It's kind of goofy. Yeah, it's goofy.
Well, I wanted to say I really did like. That was probably my favorite Mariner moment, was where she's listing off all the crazy stuff she's seen, and you're like, no, I can imagine that in a Star Trek. Yeah, I can imagine that Star Trek episode. I can imagine that Star Trek. All of this actually feels like. If any Star Trek character made a list of all the crazy shit they've seen, it would be just as absurd as this list.
And when they're being swung around until like the spider just gets tired of suckling moisture off of him. I guess he was sweatier than Mariner. That's why it went after him. But
I did wonder, there was a joke made of like that it was eating his clothes when they threw their clothes for distraction, but not hers. And I guess that's supposed to be why. But I have wondered if there was like some like hidden plot point or something they were going to expand on later, like because he does say he's like, why is it eating mine and not yours?
I thought that was just his kind of obsession thing about the of just this kind of weird way of looking at things. I did not like the way they handled the suckling scene, precisely because I was like, what? So they basically just tell him, lay back and think of Queen Victoria. Well, this arranged marriage gets consummated. And I'm just like, and we can't stun it. It would spoil the milk. We have to let you get physically assaulted and by this thing.
Context, in the show's context, I think this is like a big shaggy dog licking you. It's like, it's not meant to be taken as anything worse than that. Although they did sort of make jokes about like Boimler kind of feeling violated by it. That's their sort of raunchy spin on it. But I think it was meant to be like a big dog licking you, basically.
Well, I don't know. I don't like the whole trope of, if a guy gets sexually harassed, then it's okay. But if it's a girl, then it's a problem.
I never thought of it as a sexual thing.
It was, I went, especially the second time I watched it, I was like, yeah, this just feels like, just relax, oh God, it just felt really, I did not like that. I didn't like the way she responded, and the fact that the only reason they don't stun it is the milk might taste bad. I think he'd be okay with that. I think,
they depend on the milk, though. I think the milk is we learned that like the slime of the spider cow is what cures the virus. I think because they drink the milk is why all these people are like immune to the zombie virus on their home world.
Yeah, no, I did like that. I don't know if they stated that. It all kind of, if you think about it, makes sense.
They do kind of like take a joke at Star Trek when she tells him, when he's like, "Oh, my bones hurt" or whatever, and she says, "Oh, you'll be fine. Doc can wave a light over it."
That was the funniest joke in the thing. I laughed so hard at the wave a light over it. It kind of made me forget about everything that had come right before that point just to hear that joke.
But, Boimler, Brian, agrees with you, though, that leaving him to be suckled by a spider cow is terrible. And it's where he confesses to Mariner that how much he doesn't like her and that he's reporting her to the captain. He'd been asked to spy on her.
Yep. Which I kind of like that he tells her, because he is kind of breaking the, he's doing his own thing. He's not going to follow all the rule instructions the captain gave, but he's going to follow some of them. And he's kind of becoming his own man by choosing which rules he's going to follow or orders he's going to follow and which ones he doesn't. So I kind of like that moment.
It's funny seeing him in these alien overalls that these kind of like lederhosen or something that these aliens give him, and he's covered in pink goo. When they beam back up, we get that hard cut to just like the fucking zombie apocalypse on their ship.
Yeah.
I guess no one's been in communication with them, but
it'd be like if you walked into the Enterprise in the middle of like Naked Time or something like that, or some other crazy episode with like an invasion.
Yeah, I can see why Boimler doesn't like Mariner at this point. Chopped up his leg, took away his communicator, stood by and worried about milk while he got assaulted by a spider cow. Yeah, I would be like, yeah, fuck this girl. I am dropping her in the shit, just like I was ordered to do.
Well, it'll be interesting, like, because we'll learn more over time as to like what the show values, and like right now, this first episode was kind of more. Like it kind of focused on her being the person who seems like the rule breaker, but actually kind of has maybe a better sense of justice than he does in some ways and what's going on. And of course, he proves to not be as much of a stick up the ass rules follower as he seems. Yeah. But as far as like where the show will continue to sort of focus and whose values are most important to it, that I guess that'll remain to be seen a little bit.
But of course, this is what allows Dr. Tiana to develop the cure, is having the pink slime, which is kind of convenient. But like me and Brian were just saying,
they got 25 minutes for their episode, so yeah, they're like boom, boom, boom.
And I like that they had like the ticking clock of like the captain is about to turn herself, and it just reminded me of how much I appreciate the original series and the animated series having dramatic ticking clocks in their stories, whereas the Next Generation sometimes chose not to do that. And
Dr. Perlasky credit again to Idic Warrior, our listener,
Idic
for that one
today.
Oh, wow.
Yes, good stuff.
I did like the line earlier about strap them up together. It's not like they can infect each other. That was fun.
Yeah.
I think they're saying that in like the COVID wards at the hospitals right now.
Shit.
That's when Mariner says that she doesn't wash her hands. I was thinking like, ooh, that's a pretty bad thing to say these days.
Not super timely. Yeah, it might have been written before things got bad.
The joke that I think
we need some of that alien slime fast.
Is that going to be our cure? The joke that didn't land with me was when Ransom was so worried about like if he ate human flesh, which
I thought that was all right. And they're like, he's like, did I eat human flesh? And they're like, a little or something like that. That was kind of funny.
I really appreciate how like the spider cow was non-lethal, and I assume that like no one dies during like this.
Right.
That
if they
was
died,
thing.
It's not as funny. If he bit a few people, it's funny.
Yeah. I wanted a line. I wanted an announcement over the PA where the captain says, "Thanks to the great work of Perlasky or whatever her name is." Yeah. What'd you say it was?
Dr. Tiana. It sounds like a Vulcan name.
Tiana. Okay, so thanks to the great work of Tiana, no one actually died on the ship. I just thought that should have been slid in there somewhere in a quick moment in the bar at the end or something like that, just to establish nobody actually died over this.
I got a kick out of when they're all laughing when Dr. Tiana is told like looks like more. What is it? Prize
paperwork
research. Great, more paperwork, and they're laughing. I felt like the end of a TOS episode, and everyone's laughing on the bridge.
Right. on the ready room, they basically said that the bridge crew and stuff, they have their own story going on. Basically it would be a whole regular episode for them. It's just that we're not seeing that story. And but like we catch these glimpses, and I'm sure they will continue to spoof some of the tropes, including the end joke episode, the Mr. Spock, I think you're getting more human every day.
But then in our final minutes of the episode, Boimler does choose not to rat out Mariner, that he has, after being annoyed by her for all this time, he's kind of earned some respect for her.
That was the comment I wanted to make earlier, but decided I'd wait till now. The captain screws up. I think when he walked through that door, he was going to drop Mariner in the shit. And the captain's high and mighty, I don't give a shit about the lower deck people. By the end of their little introduction, he changed his mind. And I think she was the one who changed his mind. And I kind of like it, but it also says some unlikable things about our captain, which I guess could be developed more as the show goes on, and we could see a little more of why she's like that or something.
Sure. Well, go ahead, Father. You're about to talk about the Admiral.
Yes, the Admiral, who we don't know, is his last name Mariner? Is his last name Freeman? Because it kind of sounds like they're married. Like he calls her honey, talking to Captain Freeman. But Mariner is their daughter. And I love that he's voiced by Phil Lamar, who's like one of my all-time favorite voice actors. He's also done live action stuff. He was the FedEx guy on Mad TV, I think is what he's frequently known for. He's also the guy who John Travolta shot in the car in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah. He got what I think was my favorite line in it, which was when he's trying to turn loose of the conversation with his wife. He's like, I got to go, Admiral stuff. Made me laugh.
It was, I thought, a little, once I realized, oh, well, they're a couple, so they can get away with all sorts of conversational things. And a lot of the problem I had with the way Mariner was being treated on the ship made much more sense after the revelation came. I was like, okay, a lot of the stuff I was going to complain about this podcast, I now feel okay with now that I know their relationship. She is treating him like
it's a good first episode reveal.
It's the dramatic hook. This is what's going to keep you coming back for more. And I love that they kept a lid on this. Because I do this podcast, I don't have the luxury of like ignoring things. I need to like be on top of the trailers and if there's like new announcements and stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff other than Star Trek, I kind of try to ignore everything just so I can be surprised by the actual content. Mm-hmm. But even keeping up with all the promotional material. Going to Star Trek Las Vegas and seeing Mike McMahan in person talk about the show, all of that stuff, they never, ever, ever let on about this reveal. They did a good job protecting that. And now that that's dropped on us, it is the hook to keep people watching.
Yeah, I did think they did a great job. That was a very smart choice, keeping that under wraps completely and pulling it off.
And just one thing to say about this, and then whatever you have to say about the ending. But the final stuff in their bar, when Boimler tells Mariner that he thinks Starfleet is better with her in it, and he didn't rat her out. And when when she learns that he did that for her, and like her reaction when like she hugs him and says Boimler, like for whatever reason, like when I got to this part of the episode, this made me get like a really big smile and made me so excited to continue to watch these characters, because I just love like this very Star Trek, very much of like we're gonna be friends, we're gonna be family on this ship that we're serving together. We're all different and we have this infinite diversity and infinite combinations type of things when we work together, when we pull our resources. And it made me happy. It made me smile. And
it's the moment that they connect emotionally, or that these stills you're showing us are actually really good stills. I like them as individual frames. They're really good.
Yeah, I will say it kind of points to her. The fact that he needs to do some big sacrificial thing and defy orders before she has any respect for him, or kind of, it points to her having some issues she needs to work through. I hope that's how the writers see it too, and that this is not just, oh no, it's perfectly functional that she treats people that she doesn't like crap until they do something for her. The big question I have about Mariner: why is she in Starfleet? Because this episode seems to indicate that she really doesn't fit and she really doesn't like any aspect of Starfleet. So why is she in Starfleet? And I assume they're going to answer that question as the series goes on.
Yeah,
I want to know what
they kind of let us know a little bit of that, I think, when
she likes to help the little people.
She likes to help the little people, and I think she's actually really good at it wasn't in this episode. I'm thinking like one of the trailers or something. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the line, there's actually a clip of her saying that she says something like, "Look, I'm good at this strange new worlds and new civilization stuff." And I think it's almost kind of like Kirk-like to me, or one of the little bit more like roguish Star Trek characters.
Right, that she's going to bend the rules to get something
for
to
the
make
greater
good happen. Yeah.
And I really enjoy that, and I feel like that's very relatable to be in these larger structures or organizations or whatever, and be kind of restricted from doing what you think you're confident at doing that could actually like help and you could be successful at, but you're just kind of restrained by whatever society.
I usually like to think that Starfleet in this era was broadly, better than they may be portraying it here.
Yes.
I'm a little sad to see that the bureaucracy would starve these aliens or whatever. But it's certainly a relatable concept, like in the present day. And
Star Trek bureaucracy will tell Captain Kirk, "Oh, you can't look for your crew that crashed on the Galileo 7. We got to get out of the system." Or, it's traditionally, occasionally antagonistic. So I don't know.
It's kind of funny to me because that kind of is counter to how everybody always likes to talk about Star Trek as this, Starfleet is this sort of shining beacon of, what we want humanity to be. But then they're like, oh, but they also have hawkish captains, bureaucracy, and red tape and all of this.
Yeah.
And Star Trek is slightly mixed messagey sometimes as far as their future. But I get that too because, hey, the world is a little bit messy sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I know why Kirk puts up with all the bureaucracy. I don't know why Mariner is putting up with the things.
Yeah, we're going to get that, I think.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Mom is a captain is certainly going to be part of that answer.
Yeah, Dad's an admiral, and like she said, I'm very complicated, and we kind of took that as like this kind of like flippant remark. Yeah, you're kind of full of yourself, is what you are. Is whatever you dismiss that, but no, I think she actually is a complicated character, and that reveal that these people are a little deeper than we're initially shown. I like, and by the end of this episode, I'm on board. I'm invested in this. To me, this is a legitimate Star Trek show. I'm on board for the rest of the ride, the rest of the mission. Let's do it.
I want this to affect like the tone on, like, say, Picard and Discovery. I want people to accidentally bat-leth off people's arms and be like, oops. That's what's going to happen, Fatheree. Once you open the door, it's a slippery slope.
I guess I feel like Boimler at the end of this episode with the show has got me around the head saying, we're going to make you love this show. We're going to make you love this show. And he's like, what are you doing? No, hey, I'm not sure.
Jumping up and down, chanting the name of the show, Lower Decks.
Yeah. That's, I did actually feel very, that's where I am in this show right now. I'm not entirely sure if I want her Mariner's arm around my neck, jumping up and down.
I like the metaphor. I like the metaphor.
We only have a few minutes left. This episode had a lot of what we call Gorn eggs, all of our Easter eggs, in-jokes, and continuity connections that we find in the episode. I'm going to try to run through these very quickly. And if I miss any, as always, be sure to let me know. But I'm just going to start from the beginning and work my way through. Starting off.
Hit it.
Douglas Station. It is a space dock type space station that we've been seeing since Star Trek 3. There's several of them that show up in Star Trek The Next Generation. In the past, we've had Leah Station Alpha, Starbase 74, Starbase 84, and Starbase 133. Now we have Douglas Station. This was a really weird one, but in that scene of Mariner in the closet, if you turn up the brightness, you can actually see Nomad in the left side of the screen. Kind of like the outer casing.
Oh.
It's the same as like the old Nomad prop from the TOS episode. Yeah. That's a true Easter egg. I think that's just in there. It's kind of like R2-D2 floating around in Star Trek 09.
Yeah,
right.
We have blue Romulan whiskey, kind of like blue Romulan ale that we've seen before.
Yeah.
Also, if you look in the contraband that Mariner brings back on the ship, she has some weapons in there, including what looks like the weapon that Tasha Yar used.
Oh, man.
Next Generation episode, Code of Honor.
The most embarrassing of them all. Yeah. Love it.
She says that she got the batleth from a guy with an eye patch. I see a lot of people saying that they think it's Chancellor Martok from Deep Space Nine. But no, he never had an eye patch. He just had an eye missing. General Chang had an eye patch. Of course, he's dead. But yeah, sometimes Klingons have eye patches.
It could be Martok started wearing an eye patch. This is several years since we've last seen him.
In the ship's tour, Boimler points out a buffer? A pattern buffer. That's transporter technology. Mm-hmm. He also mentions the Cetacean Ops, which I thought was a really weird joke. On the old Next Generation blueprints, there were actually Citation labs where dolphins supposedly were on the ship. They mention it in dialogue twice in the Next Generation about Citation Ops that Mike McMahan says we'll see it in Lower Deck Season 2. And I don't know if there's going to be like dolphin crew members. That's a little too Sequest for me, but it's weird.
I think they're going to be dolphin crew members, at least according to the TNG tech manual. They actually, on Picard's Enterprise, held the rank of lieutenant. So
yeah, but I always thought that was silly.
Yeah, well, this show is silly. They're going for the silly.
And then we have crewmen in bunks like we saw in Star Trek 6. We have the return of the Argo like we saw Picard driving in Star Trek Nemesis. Mariner mentions that one of the things that she's done has been trapped in a sentient cave. To me, that sounds a lot like the cave in the other Star franchise on Dagobah. It's a cave that knows things. She also fought a Yeti in a Klingon prison, so I think she's done time at Rapente and had to fight a big scary alien like Kirk. When Boimler and Mariner take off their uniforms to have these decoys for the monster, that's actually a trick that Chief O'Brien did in Deep Space Nine Season 2 episode Paradise. He strips down to his underwear and sets up his uniform to distract this guy so he can get the jump on him. I call it the O'Brien maneuver. Ensign Barnes mentions to Ensign Mariner that she likes the monkeys. Of course, the monkeys being the inspiration for Pavel Chekhov's look in the original series. And she also refers to it as classical music, like they referred to the Beastie Boys in Star Trek Beyond. I
have to assume that what's his name, showrunner guy. I feel like that might be one of those. He's a Monkees fan.
Maybe. In Captain Freeman's ready room, we see a sextant, old naval tool. We also see a baseball, kind of a DS9 callback. Some bottles of liquor that I'm not sure if they're anything. And there's kind of a military-looking cap that's kind of like the caps worn in the Kelvin timeline. So maybe that timeline.
For what it's worth, Pike in The Cage had a cap very similar to that sitting on top of his television set.
Yes. Okay. So that's prime timeline justification for that. When Mariner self-appoints herself as Boimler's mentor, she says that you can be my Chadich, which was the Klingon term. That's Picard was the Chadich for Worf.
I knew that had to be a reference, but my Klingon wasn't up to decoding it.
There are a shitload of familiar aliens in this show. I don't know if I'm going to name all of them, but Barnes is a Trill. We see a Benzite get off the ship. Those are the guys with the vape mods, right? The Benzite, Murdoch or whatever his name was. There's some Andorians in the background. We see a Bolian, and there's a Vulcan who gets black tar around his face, and it makes him look like Mirror Spock.
I noticed that. I saw that one.
Nice.
And there's also, as much as there's like a lot of alien species, there's also a lot of familiar sound effects. I heard a bunch of TNG. I think some might have been Voyager, but door chimes, phasers, transporters, the hailing on the comm badge, hailing on your computer to talk to the Admiral. So a lot of familiar sound effects. Those are all the Easter eggs I saw. If you caught any that I didn't, be sure to let me know, because we do like to share our comments sometimes. Dave, do you want to, speaking of which, do you want to read out some of these subspace transmissions we received?
Yeah, I think we've got 2 or 3 to quick throw out there. This was from our episode where I had to miss, but y'all read my stuff kindly. That was what we hope to see in Lower Decks. This was all our speculative stuff, and we were asking people what they wanted to see too. So from Twitter, Chris Judge says, Star Trek fun. God only knows we all need a good laugh at the moment.
Yes, that's Chris Judge, the Trek collector. It would have been more appropriate to read that in an Irish accent, but...
Star Trek fun. God only knows we all need a good laugh at the moment. The best I can do.
What else we got?
On YouTube, Jude Beacom, let's see, said, let's find a way to bring Kirk back. It's sci-fi. You can literally pull him out of any era, and it's a cartoon. So even if you have 60s Kirk show up due to some cloning fiasco or time travel incident or accident, you can still have the hilarious and talented Bill Shatner nail the performance. The offensive grandfather of Trek has been out of the game for far too long. He also kindly noted, looking forward to the coverage and a speedy and happy recovery to Mrs. Dave's mom, which, thank you. I will say my mom that had some heart surgery and that y'all referenced on the episode, she's doing great. She had to get a pacemaker, but everything went super well, and she was literally back home the next day. So she's doing very well. Thank you for that, Jude. I really appreciate it. And I think we've only got one other comment, and this is from Facebook from D. John Scott. Who has a very simple 2-word request for something to see here: Gorn crewman.
Okay, so those are the things that some of our listeners are hoping to see this season in Lower Decks. Who knows what we'll get or what we won't get, but be sure to tune in each week. We're going to be doing those at 7:30 Central Time every Friday, and let us know how you feel about the episodes. Let us know how you feel about this episode, and we might use that feedback next week when we will be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 2, Envoy. Did I say Discovery a second ago when I meant Lower Decks? I might have done that.
I'm not 100% sure.
I do some Freudian slip stuff sometimes. I'm trying to wrap up because we are at the end of our time, because right now, if you hop on over to Starfleet Boy on YouTube, those of you that are watching us live, you can see Starfleet Boy After Dark, his live show over there. I might go and hop in over there or join in the chat with Sohel. But thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us tonight to talk about Lower Decks. And please tune in next time.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Well, until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.